to understand.
Sorry.
Yeah, except to understand and to see what's going on, and then ourselves deciding, like, okay, even as we're being herded this way, know that this is what we're being herded into, and then deciding ourselves, I think, what are the inconveniences we're willing to put up with so that we don't get herded so quickly.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So uh, chapter 37,
So
right?
we read about half of it, Sale O. We read about half of it. We talked about her karmic connection to Milarepa. Um,
And
so
I think that we'd gone over 36 without over
without,
anybody looking over our shoulder
yeah, by
and making sure.
ourselves,
Oh, you're fine.
So Megam Repa. Well,
Milarepa.
Megam
That's a
Repa.
pretty rich chapter.
36 with Megum Repa. Uh, it's a good song. This, you know, we could look at that short chapter.
36. Yeah. What do you guys think, Jim? Joyce? What do you think?
Well, first of all, I'm most interested in hearing about whatever her name, Saleh having dark skin and bright yellow hair,
Uh-huh.
Right.
and what significance that had.
Not you know, not much significant except you have to remember that in this area which he was wandering around in, it's on the borders of historical Tibet and India, and particularly the further west you go, there are Aryan people who have lived there for ages. To this day, in those areas, there are entire village of. Now, the Aryan people, this is how they self-identify. They're not dark skinned per se, but then on the Indian side, you have the dark skin.
Right.
So the Hanu people, the Aryans, they have blue eyes. These at the very least, we know part of that came from Alexander the Great when they came over to India. It could go further back even. So that's all I think that is kind of being suggested there. That this is in the border region, and so you know they there are different people living in the border regions. Yeah.
Thanks.
So, so if we look at 36, so this Megum Repa, so there are these this class of freelance practitioners, the Repas. Freelance as in they're not tied to any monastic community. They're not quite tied to land and family the way that Marpa and some of Marpa's prominent disciples were people like that, not monastic, but nonetheless tied to land and family. The Repas are another if you could call that, another categories, and they got their name from the fact that they wear this plain, coarse cotton. Those who wear plain, coarse cotton, meaning cheap, uncomfortable, raw cotton. And that's all they wear. And of course, remembering that they are living in Tibet. So it's not only plain and cheap and coarse, also doesn't provide as much warmth as one would wish. So others might be wearing skin and, leather and fur, but these repas, they don't do that. So Milarepa, so then these, Drigum Repa. Then after Milarepa, the most famous Repa would be actually Rechongpa, even though his name doesn't have the Repa, but probably Rechongpa would be the next most known of these Repas. So here, Milarepa begins the song by saying to Megum, if you have confidence in the Guru and the key instructions, you will be powerless not to give rise to experience and realization. He's saying, it's not possible. In fact, if you resist, kind of to say how powerful it can be if you really have confidence in the Guru and the key instructions given by the Guru, then experience and realization would arise. Experience is a necessary stepping stone to give rise to realization. An experience or experiences, here is a technical term, yeah? It's not just talking about experience in general. So experience here is nyam. And nyam, for example, that phrase in Tibetan that is usually translated into English as to practice, to practice something. The Tibetan phrase of that is nyamsu lenpa. Nyamsu lenpa. And it's the same nyam here. So len is the same as tonglen len, which is to take. So nyamsu lenpa, which is translated into simply practice, you can see how bad that choice is. But I guess it's necessary, otherwise it's a little clumsy every time nyamsu lenpa turns up on nyam len. Nyam len for short for nyamsu lenpa. Nyam len would be take. Take nyam. So to take nyam, meaning to have, to possess nyam. So what are these nyam? Nyam are necessarily experiences that would arise in the context of practice, that when they arise, you might label them desirable or undesirable. Or even more religiously, you might say, oh, auspicious, inauspicious. All these are nyam. They are not like the ordinary ripening of good or bad karma, although they are, of course, connected to our karma. But you could say that they are, of course, everything that we experience, comes from the ripening of past karma. But what makes them nyam is that these are karma, you could say, that are ripened more quickly because they have been fertilized with these practices that we do. Yeah? So nyamlen is a verb. Like so when you take these, when you apply the meditations, apply the different instructions, then apply, and so here the verb would be to nyamlen, right? When you do that, then nyam would arise. So these nyam, when they arise, knowing how to handle them is what then gives rise to realizations. And so here what is contrasted then, or the two-step will be nyam that leads to tok. Tokpa. Tokpa is realization. And the nyams that can then lead to tokpa. So here Milarepa says, when you have confidence in the guru and the key instructions, so meaning you apply, you put into practice these key instructions, then nyam and tok are bound to arise. However, they will not develop quickly, so you must be able to meditate in mountain retreats. So they will not develop quickly if you are still busy with the world, and its worldly, its concerns. And so Milarepa is big on urging people to pull back from all the affairs of the world, because he says there's no end to that, but there's an end to your life. And so which one are you going to race against? So he says, the affairs of the world will continue. There's no end to that. There's no finishing them. But your life is going to end before the affairs of the world can be completed. So knowing that, understanding that, it is better that you go put into practice so that nyam and tok can develop quickly.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, the nyam. When you say they arise, it theoretically, I guess this is you're practicing on the cushion or in your cave, but also just as you get up, as you eat, as you look out the window all the time, right? So these are not necessarily,
If you are able to sustain.
yeah, but they're not necessarily only coming up while you're in the middle of formal practice. So it's like, I'm just saying in my experience, if I'm regularly practicing, I'm on that train, then these things kind of happen, all the time. They
Yes.
come to me all
Yes.
the time. And
Yeah.
so I'm just asking if that's what you're talking about, are these kind of like little flashes, little insights, little
In
like, or you have
Milarepa's
some feedback from an experience or something like that.
in Milarepa's context, because he is really pushing for mostly on the cushion rather than mostly off the cushion.
Right.
So we have to interpret,
Yeah.
And so you could say that, the nyam that arises for us when we're mostly off cushion, they are hard to recognize, and we often miss them. The nyam that arises for people like Milarepa, they are kind of shocking, shockingly good or shockingly traumatic. Yeah. So some of the reports that I like one I shared recently on the Drigong Dhammakirti group on Facebook. Yeah, this guy who talked about his practice of meditation, like sort of in the spirit rock, tradition, although he didn't name names. It led into like real, traumatic. He was doing the jhanas, and the trend now among these insight people is to now, after years of poo-pooing the need to establish like intense meditative concentration in the Burmese tradition, they in the modern meditation movement coming out of Burma and the popularization of that, they have, the Mahasi method, if you all know those terms, have downplayed and in fact even discouraged the development of the jhana states. which in Sanskrit is the dhyana states, the states of meditative equipoise. Now the pendulum has swung the other way, and so now there's a whole bunch of people teaching how to enter these more and more intense states, and it's all charted very clearly, very technique oriented. So this person, did that, and then like have like psychotic breakdown and everything. So then when I shared it with, people, and there are some people that said, oh, he did it wrong. Oh, he did it wrong. Oh, maybe he was dabbling with drugs, and that's why, it's like, who knows? The point is not that. The point is not to question whether he's sincere or not sincere. The point I'm making is not even whether, he's properly, quote unquote, properly guided or not. The point is, when you start doing such intense things, Buddhist or not, Dharma or not, it's dangerous. Then, given that, then you ask the next question. Given you're walking into such dangerous territory, do you want to do it with, a lot of, like, guidance? Or do you want to just check in and out? Oh, this teacher is coming through town. That teacher is coming to town. Oh, let me just take this retreat. Oh, let me take that retreat. It's like people don't get it. Like, when you do such intensive practice, the niyam that arises is no kidding. Yeah, because you are poking into the territory of bursting samsara. You think samsara is just going to sit around and let you poke it like that? No. Samsara is not going to just sit back and let you poke it and burst it, It's going to fight back. But people do this as if, I just mastered the technique and then it's going to work. To be fair, like this movement, when it is in Burma, it is still grounded in the traditions that are there. But then when they come over here, that broader context and tradition is simply not there. Right? Suddenly our context is LA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's very different whether it's in Mandalay or LA. In Mandalay, you can be very technique oriented, but there's a broader culture. There's a broader understanding and healthy fear and respect and all of that. That is part and parcel of that interdependence. But now people are importing techniques out of that context and then just letting that loose, right? Then of course, yeah, you are, like messing with dragons, right? And you are crunchy. It was a nice snack for the dragon. Yeah, so coming back to the original question, primarily they're talking about these really intensive things.
Okay.
Like intensively, like blissful. Then you can stray in that direction. Intensively, traumatic. And you can stray in that way.
Would you
Yes.
would you say that devotion is kind of serves as a container for
Oh, absolutely, I think.
that kind of practice?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because I'm thinking in a cave, you don't have anybody around.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds downright spooky, actually, probably.
Yeah.
And so, but you do have your devotional container.
Yes, you have your devotional container, and then you have the presence of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that, that acts as responding to. Right? They say, the hook of your devotion meets the ring of the Buddha's compassion. then it works, you know. Or rather, no, the ring of your devotion needs to be complete so that the hook of compassion can pull you in. If your devotion has a gap, you know, it'll go so far. Then again, the ring comes and then it'll, you know, come out. Yeah, and devotion is not like piety per se. It's a heart quality that, and then in more general terms, it would be like the culture, the container I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know, like your neighbors sort of get it. You know, the guy you buy, you know, fruits from sort of get it. You know, not like get it, but they get it, and they're all pieces of this interdependence. You know. Whereas, you know, does your grocer get it? You know, like even to that degree? No, probably not. They think, you know, what are you doing? You know.
You know, Mick and I are going in to Gamde, UK for a
Uh-huh.
21 days
Yeah.
for our retreat. So you're scaring me a little bit. Although people say, yeah, you have all these experiences. Get ready to cry a lot. That's what
Uh huh. Uh huh. Tibetan Buddhist retreats tend to not give rise to these things
yeah.
because they don't directly introduce people into these intensive meditations.
Okay.
They coordinate body, speech, and mind, and you know, and then there's a lot of like group activity.
Yeah.
So it's very different.
Yeah. Good.
You're not like, you know, like issuing a challenge to the dragon. So the Tibetan approach is very different. You know, I'm biased, you know, I'm sure, but it doesn't say, you know, you directly go, you know, confront the dragon.
Well, I would say we're also pretty well prepared for it. I mean,
Uh-huh.
we don't just jump right in.
Yeah,
We've
yeah,
been, you know, led
yeah.
forward.
And more generally, I think like Tibetan Buddhist practice, if anything, you know, you randomly walk into something, you're more likely to just say, this is incomprehensible and this is too quote unquote ritualistic, and you just walk out, you know.
Yeah.
As opposed to Vipassana meditation, you know, you're like, oh wow, that's not much to do. It's pretty good. I just watch my mind. Then yeah, it's like okay. I recommend to people like, oh yeah, go sign up a 10-day. You know, like then you can really see, you know, catch a glimpse of how your mind works. But at the same time, you know, that's like a very crash course, you know, way to see, you know, a little bit of how your mind works. So a lot of these more problems that arise in those communities.
Mm.
Tibetan Buddhist communities, different set of problems,
Yeah.
dysfunctional family dynamics, and the drama that comes up from there. Rarely intensive meditation causing people to go berserk. Not unknown, you know, but not so common. Yeah, like I hear, you know, like kind of an open secret up in Massachusetts, the more conservative branch of this insight movement. Jack Cornfield is out in California. Those are the crazy liberals, and then Joseph Goldstein up in Massachusetts. That the local, you know, people kind of know, like, okay, another retreat, and people would like walk into the grocery store and see a, you know, stark naked guy walking around. They're like, okay, call the retreat center because someone has, you know,
Like let loose.
oh yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's funny.
yeah, and so, you know, like, okay, call, you know, like when in doubt, call the retreat center. It's one of their people who, you know, have this kind of nyam arising, you know.
Mm.
So yes, Casey.
You know, when you're talking about this, I was like, I don't know how I managed to even keep it together, but when I did the retreat, I was on the property for 9 months, but actually in the cave for 6 months. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and when I got the guidance to go, that inner guidance, I mean, it was just this full yes to do this. It wasn't like I tried to make it happen. So it was just following that. But it was intense. It
Uh-huh.
was intense. And there was so much that came up. But I
Mm-hmm.
worked really hard. I think a lot of it was just intuitive, but also maybe having a background in
Yes.
psychology, psychotherapy.
Yes.
And I mean, every day I wanted to leave, but there was that, now I can go, oh, that was devotion. I was just,
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say, okay, if it's this bad in the morning, then I'll leave.
Right.
And then in the morning, it was like, okay, a little bit better. So I stayed. But
Yeah.
by the time it was done, I could barely talk or put work
Mm-hmm.
together or anything. And having to leave there and
Right.
some time with family, and they didn't get it when I tried to explain, but
Right.
my husband, Jim,
Right.
got it. And
Right.
so I was able
Right.
to, help, but I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I would say in all traditional spiritual traditions, it doesn't matter, Sufi, you know, uh, Christian contemplative, they all talk about, so the Christians would talk about the dark night of the soul, you know. So this is all quite known. It's just that in the last 20, 30 years, spirituality have become popularized. And so they're only selling the version, oh, it'll make you better.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, of course it will. And in little sprinkles, it will, make samsara more comfortable, sure. And I don't have a problem with that, actually. Keep going, like, I mean, in the Bodhicharyavatara, like, it talks about at the end of taking the bodhicitta vow, in chapter 3, it says, I declare to the world, I invite all sentient beings to the great, like, joy, to the great joy of being fully liberated. And also, meanwhile, whatever little joys that they can get. Yeah. So it's like, okay, I actually, no, I don't have a problem with, but I do have a problem when people naively, are kind of being led into something that they're not ready, with no one particularly trying to cause harm, but ignorance,
well, thankfully, I think obviously I knew something that helped me get through it, but
Mm-hmm.
it was tough, and it was tough for several years after,
Right.
integrating.
Right. Right.
And I was very blessed to have Jim that
Mm-hmm.
knew about
Mm-hmm.
spiritual emergency and all
Right.
that kind of stuff. And
Right.
having known a little bit and picked up enough, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally get what you're
Right.
saying. And I've had some clients that, for whether it was through psychedelics or meditation, just kind of opened
Yeah.
up,
Exactly.
gone into places that really didn't work so well.
Yeah, they're not supposed or not ready to. And they always say, like, if you, on the other hand, you cannot be afraid of the nyam, then you will never get tok, you never get realization. Yeah, it's a matter of, like, doing the preparation that you can, as Cheryl was saying, doing the preparation that you can, and then with a healthy, right, with a healthy dose of, like, like, now we're entering, some dangerous territory, there are dragons here, like, and that's good, it's, but again, like, so, yeah, it's not just here. I think I mentioned before, like, growing up in Asia, I've seen people at Buddhist meditation centers who have, like, lost their marbles, and people are like, well, they cannot jump through, that obstacle.
So that even in a community, like you were saying,
Oh yes, yes, of course. That's why Milarepa is talking about the dangers of that as well. Oh, totally. Even in that community, uh, one of our retreatants, this was year 2000, 1999. I met this retreatant at the monastery. And within a year, I met him. He was in between his close retreat, this monk. And then within a year, I heard, that he one day just like, poured kerosene on himself and lit a match.
Oh,
He didn't die, and the burns weren't too bad, but bad, So that happened. Then more recently, another monk that was a guest, like he took care of all the foreign guests that came through the monastery. And then at one point he said he wants to do retreat, 3-year retreat. Then he did, but then in the middle of it, he could not sleep. Like he just could not, and it was driving him crazy. Like he could not control his sleep. One day, he just disappeared. Like everything, his phone, his everything was there. And he was already out of retreat because he could not sleep. And he would be up like for a week, 10 days. Until physically he collapses. Eventually he disappeared. The hopeful story is that he has gone into the mountains, But people said, the more likely story is like he hurled himself off a river or somewhere and decided to end it because he couldn't, Even in the best circumstance, these things are going to arise. Because, again, you are poking the bubble of samsara,
in our own psyche, it's our collective psyche that we're poking. So it's those layers.
Yeah. So, yeah, but, and back to that question, it's like, yeah, so then how do we translate this niyam? Then our niyams are not so intense and much better in that way.
yeah.
Then we can work through them and build up, right, confidence. Yeah, so I'm an advocate for that kind of, practice. It's like, just bit by bit, you build up, and then you see certain things, that you label not good, you learn from it. You see certain things that you label good, then you learn from it, then that gives rise to mini realizations, mini niyam, mini realization, minuscule niyam, minuscule realization, and you build up, and be okay with, 3 incalculable eons. Or in practical terms, 30 years, And I have like some people at the center, they're like late 70s. They're like, I was like, no, including you. Do you have 30 years? And then they're like, I was like, no, the point is in your heart. Yeah, don't think, how can I live to 110? Beside the point. In your heart, do you have, patience for 30 years? If you have, then you are somewhat safe.
Milarepa ever have any more of the traumatic stuff or?
Yeah. If you read, earlier on, at this point he's pretty stable already. Oh yeah, total. And then these monsters,
Right.
these demons, yeah, all those are nyam. It's just a different cultural vocabulary. and because we know the end story, you know, so when we read the front, we're like, ah, yeah, okay, we know how the story ends. So it's not so dramatized, you know.
And he knew how to work with them.
Yeah, well, he prayed to Marpa, you know. Then Marpa comes to him, you know, because he has such confidence, yeah, in Marpa's guidance.
Is it possible also, I'm just kind of curious on a personal level on this guy, is we're only seeing the victories.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, we don't,
Totally.
we're
Yeah,
a,
for every name mentioned here,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
How many, you know?
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, how did Milarepa, you know if somebody wasn't going to be a success, is going to have more difficulty? Is that anywhere about his discernment?
Oh, yes, of course. You know, if we believe what we believe about Milarepa, he knows.
Well, in the next chapter, the young man, he's testing her and saying basically she doesn't have what it takes, but it
Mm-hmm.
sounds so much like Milarepa.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it sounded like Milarepa talking, but it was her. And so then he taught her.
Yes. Yeah, and also, you know, like Milarepa knows more than, you know, most teachers would know whether what kind of obstacles would arise for the student and when and how to overcome. And Marpa knew, and so Marpa, you know, gave Milarepa basically some, you know, time capsules and say, when you hit a certain point at this point, open this letter or open that instruction. And so, yeah. Yeah, of course. So there are those who have power over, you know, to be able to see. But of course, what they see is not set in stone.
So it makes me think that all that Marpa had Milarepa do with the building and tearing down the building
Mm-hmm.
was actually working on his psyche so that when he did get the instructions, he was better able to manage.
Yes. And so now, you know, we just give ngondro, you know, the traditional what now is known as ngondro, but Milarepa's ngondro was that.
What's that? Yeah.
You know, in the language of karma, is working off, you know, your more problematic karma before you know, so it's building up this toughness, building up confidence as well, you know, building up resistance, in the case of Milarepa. Yeah.
We talked
Anyway.
last week. We also talked about the pointing out instructions, and
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you want to get into that at all, but we were just kind of. It's the first paragraph of this chapter, and you know, I suppose anyway. We just kind of went, gee, what is that, or how does it work? I don't know. Maybe we don't.
Oh, there are many ways of pointing out, and pointing out quite literally, you know, like to point to what the view is. Yeah. So it says here, pointing out of the view, meditation, and conduct in union. And the merchant saw the natural state of his own face and attained immeasurable delight and joy. There is a very good on YouTube. I liked it. Look for Shechen Rabjam, Shechen. Let me type this in chat. Shechen Rabjam Rinpoche's. So he gave 2 talks, I think, in England, a couple of years right before pandemic, I think, where he gave a talk and sort of like a very casual talk on these like mind instruction pointing out.
Mhm.
I really liked it a lot. You could tell that he was very heartfelt, very low key, very honest, you know.
Mhm.
And I remember one of the things that he said was he said these teachings are not hidden at all. It's there already, you know. Like many times you have been pointed to.
Mhm.
It's just that maybe vocabulary isn't used that way. And so I felt from his teachings, from his talk, you can simultaneously appreciate that the pointing out instruction, it has happened for you more times than you even know,
Yeah.
as well as when the conditions come together in the right way, and the pointing out occurs again, you would recognize what is being pointed out in a much more kind of dramatic way that will make a strong imprint that will then stabilize your meditation practice. So that from that point on, meditation practice becomes habituating what has been pointed out.
Okay.
Right now, it's not yet habituating because we don't know what to habituate, right? Yeah, right now we are just kind of like building up. We say, oh, mind is empty, and then mind is luminous, you know, and then mind is all pervading, right? So right now we are approximating that based on our current ability to understand what mindfulness is. I mean, what emptiness is, what luminosity is, and what all pervading is, right? So then we kind of manufacture those feelings, right? Om Swabhava Shuddha Sava Dhamma Swabhava Shuddho Hang. And you're like, okay, you know, open, spacious, you know. And then from within there, the C syllable appears, you know. Then we, you know, we are faking it, but in a skillful way.
Yeah.
So that syllable is luminous, it's clear, and that is the essence, and that is the Sambhogakaya that will give rise to the Nirmanakaya. Then now you are the deity, you know, however your form, right?
Mhm.
So now we are going through by like somewhat artificial but skillful artificial building up. Then as you do more of that, you exhaust your obscurations. And then when the conditions are right for the next time someone is doing the pointing out, whether they call it that or not, it will suddenly, you know, you will feel like, you know, it hit you like emptiness. Ah! That you don't feel anymore. You are like Om Swabhava Shuddha. Oh, here, please go away. Oh, please go away. You know, you get it. You know, you're like, yeah, emptiness. Anyway, go listen to that talk. I mean, I will go listen to, and then maybe we can come back and talk about the talk. You know,
That'd be great.
There's one in the True Nature of Mind, Essential Meditation Instructions.
Sorry.
I was wondering which talk of his
I don't remember. It's done in England. And there's two parts to it, I remember. Yeah, I think it's the essential nature of mind. Yeah, because that's the pointing out, you know. So everyone's, you know, getting very excited, you know. Shechen Rabjam Rinpoche is going to do nature of mind teachings, you know. And he just has such a nice way. I don't know much about him as a teacher. I mean, his fame is that he is the grandson of Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. So like his main kind of, you know, responsibility is to uphold Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche's legacy. But he's very low key, down to earth. In Tibetan cultural terms, he disappointed people recently because turns out, you know, that he's not a monk for a long time already. But it's not like he's messing around. It's one person, you know, and he has kids now, but he did not openly talk about it until recently. Then I heard some gossip about Queen Mother of Bhutan was really pissed off because the Queen Grandmother of Bhutan is the main supporter of Khyentse Rinpoche and Khyentse Rinpoche's legacy. And she found out not directly from him through the, so she's really upset, you know. But I think they've mended their fences. But to me, it's just like I don't know. You know, I'm pretty good at discerning, you know, when an Asian teacher is doing the Asian thing and when it's sincere. Trust me, there's a lot of Asian teachers doing Asian things, and then I watch my non-Asian friends going, wow. I'm like, hello, you lost in translation, you know. But with Shechen Rabjam, you know, it's like, no, he means it. You know, Asian culture, we have perfected passive aggressiveness and you know, humility as pride, you know. Really perfected that, you know. No one can rival. And most of the time, people in the West, they don't get it, you know.
Gullible. That's what we are. Gullible.
Yeah, you know. Especially, I think, you know, people in the U.S., you know, such a like straight shooter, you know. Although if you live in the South, then you see a little bit more of, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. But then I say to people, I say, you know, we don't have like this expression passive aggressiveness, you know. Like, took me a while to recognize what you all are talking about. I mean, where I come from, we call it cultured, you know. So you're not blunt. So yeah, you're cultured, you know. Anyway, that's the, you know, so then some teachers would, it's skillful. I'm not saying, again, here I'm not saying that they're pretending, but there are some teachers who kind of build up the expectations. Or we could say, you know, like encouraging a certain state of mind when you come for the pointing out nature of mind. Right? So they'll say like, next week, you know, I will do this, you know, you prepare for it. And then word goes out, and then all the students are in a heightened state, you know, of preparing and come in, and, you know, the teacher might do something dramatic, you know, stand up, you know, hold up a crystal, and then sit down and say a few words, and then, you know, look around, and, you know, and so there's some staging to kind of, here I'm not talking about charlatans staging, you know, but there's some staging that then changes everything. And so, yes, you know, like if you are able to perceive the person giving the instruction as Buddha, whatever you think Buddha is, but you've been able to do that, you will gain a lot more from that experience. Then when you leave, whether the person is Buddha or not is really not your business. In a way, it's kind of selfish. Yeah, because you can say, wait, that person has been misled by all of us, looking at her, looking at him as Buddha, right? In a way, yes, it is. It is kind of like selfish because, my position over here is I don't care if you are or not, but right now I'm seeing you as, And in that sense, you don't need to worry for the teacher because the teacher is to be held accountable and protected by their teacher. Yeah. So when it works, this is how it works. It's about the staging. In that sense, again, not charlatans staging, yeah, so there's a lot of interdependencies that needs to come together for us to, kind of get it like, oh, something has been pointed out, and not just something, but more specifically, our mind, our heart, our being as it is, is being communicated.
I was always wondered about that. I mean, just from my own experience, you can go to teachings and sometimes they really reach you,
Mm-hmm.
and then you become really aware that I'm half of that interaction.
Yes.
I'm not just passive. It's how open I am
Mm-hmm.
and how I'm hearing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been struck by these lines about seeing the voice of Padmakara in the sound. I don't know if it's Padmakara, but that is seeing the face of your guru
Mm-hmm.
in experience or in,
Mm-hmm.
and it sounds to me like there's, if you're really kind of progressed enough, I guess, you can start getting transmissions from the world, the phenomenal world, in that
Yes.
some way.
Yeah.
Because if you're open to it, if you're meeting it halfway, then that's a possibility.
Yes.
Oh.
A
But
more,
obviously the container and the
yeah, a more traditional kind of progression is expressed very in a pithy and clear way by Shapkar. This, his biography has been translated, really thick, The Life of Shapkar. In that, Shapkar was a unique figure in Eastern Tibet. He was kind of a Nyingma Gelugpa hybrid. Nyingma Gelugpa. So Shapkar, he said, at the beginning, my teacher was my Lama. So he's talking about the human teachers. Then he says, in the middle, the text became my Lama. Also, probably, in practical terms, his Lama getting old probably pass away.
Right.
Yeah. But pass away or not, he's talking about how, due to the kindness of the human teachers, I know how to read the text now. Mm-hmm. Not just like spelling how to read, but how to read. So now the text is my teacher, my Lama. Then he says at the end, my mind is my Lama. Now I can just watch my mind and learn, watch my heart and learn. So that's that shows, what's going on when we say Lama,
Yeah.
Guru, sometimes people think Guru is the person, Guru is not the person. But Guru is also not the person. Right? Simultaneously the person and bigger than the person. The prolific translator, the Kamakagyu Western Kempo by, learned Karl Brunholz. Is that how you say his last name?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, Oh, very prolific. He's translated so many Kamakagyo and Nyingma texts. He has an interview with Wisdom Podcast about he's a medical doctor by training, but so touched by Khenpo Sudrin Gyamso and Dzogchen Ponlop, and 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 then also different senior teachers of the Nyingma and Kamakagyu. He's the most prolific translator right now in terms of Nyingma Kagyu things.
Did you get the Bronhoff?
Bronhoff?
Holz.
Holz. Okay.
Yeah, Carl.
Bronholz.
K-A-R-L.
Bronholz.
It's like
Sounds
Mahamudra things. He's like translating left and right and up and down.
okay.
Brunn.
Okay.
Holzl.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he talked about earlier, right? This is like in the 70s, in the 80s, or maybe in the 80s. He's not that old, so maybe not 70s, but in the 80s. Finally, he said, like, I think it was Khenpo Sudrim Gyamso, someone like that. He asked him, "Can you be my Lama?" And he said, Khenpo had that look on his face like it was the most disgusting thing he ever heard before.
George Woodard.
It's like he says the reaction he got from Khenpo, and this is not like the first meeting with Khenpo. This is after a while, that he thought, he should formally ask Khenpo to be his guru, and he said Khenpo had this look like it's the most terrible thing he has ever heard someone said to him. Just like his face was like, what? No, he just like,
Oh.
Then again, later he asked again, can you be my guru? And then he said, then I think if I remember correctly, he said, then Khenpo like reach over and like pinch him like really hard. Pinch him really hard. And then it's like, ow! And then Khenpo said to him, the guru is not the body. And that was a pointing out for sure. Then Carl Bernholz said, there was this like, whoa. And then when he came down from that high, Khenpo Rinpoche said, okay, I will. But the more important lesson you have to learn first, the guru is not the person. The guru is the Dharmakaya.
Write that down.
I'm writing that down. We're reading this Trungpa book about Milarepa
Yeah.
and a book group,
Really good
and
book.
with Chokinima students, and some of them were students of Khenpo Tulsum Gyatso Gyampa. And they said that he taught them the songs, like he sang the songs. It was one of he
loves singing them. He
loved
make
singing them.
like use English tunes to sing them. Oh yeah.
Yeah, he made everybody learn.
This book is largely inspired by him, this translator. So if you look at the appendix back there, they'll tell you like which ones were translated with his guidance, and then which ones are like, what are the titles that he used, and what are the titles that Christopher Stagg was also one of his students, but unfortunately died in a car accident. Not such an old person at all, but he died in a car accident. There's also, I think, a wisdom podcast with Christopher Stagg that you could listen to. Very inspiring. But unfortunately, he died in a car accident in Seattle.
So thanks. I didn't know that appendix was in there, and I never.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw him once, but I never
Oh, okay.
knew that about him. But But anyway, the other thing I wanted to say about that is Chogyam Trungpa in his chapter on this Milarepa chapter, he talks about, if I could I just share one
Yeah,
thing?
yeah, please.
Um, uh, the excellence of the teacher develops with the result of the disciples, and many Milarepa songs seem to be reflections of the disciples themselves.
Yes.
That is, Milarepa created situations, and his songs seem to be ways of expressing those situations. It was not that Milarepa deliberately sang songs to bring people's realization into one-pointedness. Every song we hear from this time onward, after his meeting with Rinpoche, is based on Milarepa creating situations and on his meeting with his disciples. Each situation he created in this way became a song, and each action became a process of transmission. In other words, every situation was a kind of abhisheka, an initiation or
Yes.
transmission. So meeting of the two minds, teacher and disciple, happened all the time. I just think that idea that you're talking about earlier about teachers and the environment that they occupy. And
Yes.
so in this book group, we talk a lot about, because people have a lot of exposure to these various teachers. And what is that, you know?
Yeah, right.
So you can't it's hard for us to put ourselves in the presence of Milarepa
Right.
in these situations, but you can be sure it was kind of something.
Yeah, and so the point about progressively,
Right.
So Jigden Sumgan says, the guru becomes, for the student, more and more a Buddha based on the student's progress.
Yeah.
Ah.
Now, when people hear that, they want to fake it. That's a wrong faking. So my teacher would always say, yes, that instruction is there, but don't misconstrue this as, if in the presence of my teacher, I turn myself into a doormat and become disciple number one, that is a sign that I'm getting closer. He says, no, that's manipulating the teacher. He says, if you're really inspired by your teacher, you should be inspired to work on removing your kleshas, your afflictive emotions. And then, how do you know your afflictive emotions are actually kind of, as you work on that as your main task? The more you remove that, the more you will be able to perceive the Dharmakaya that your teacher is. So if we want to analyze, and figure out, right, what is the nuts and bolts of what's going on, it's basically saying, first of all, principle number one, all sentient beings are Dharmakaya. All sentient beings are Buddhas. So that's first thing we need to get, right? Then second, because we need to, most of us need to rely on someone else to guide us along, right? Then we work with someone or some people. We work with them. In working with them, we project, for now, that they are Buddhas. Now, if that's the case, you want to find those people whom are, in your estimation, pretty close being Buddhas. Why create trouble for yourself, right? To find those whom I don't know, gosh, they are terrible. Okay, whether they're terrible or not, it remains still that they are Dharmakaya. But then it just complicates your So Milarepa and Marpa's example, I think, is really good in that sense. Whether Marpa, is Buddha or not, Milarepa saw him as Buddha, then received teachings in that sense directly from a Buddha, right? And then Milarepa went away. Let's say Marpa is not as advanced, right? By Milarepa going away, the causes and conditions weren't there for, abuse to happen. And more importantly, the causes and conditions for Milarepa to be discouraged from practicing the Dharma was minimized. So Milarepa later, he says, you should live 3 valleys away from your guru. Because then they can't, keep asking you to, do their laundry for them or, get their oil changed.
They can't hit you.
Yeah, well, the modern equivalent would be, do my laundry and go change my oil. Once or twice is fine, but they, you don't want to put yourself in a situation where they can keep asking you to do that. Yeah, whether there is a method to the madness or not at some point, because you yourself are not stable, you're going to start doubting and say, wait, have I just been turned into, a lackey? So it's good, to like have this distance. So that you can work on. The main point is to work on applying the Dharma that you have already received. There are some teachings that say, which makes sense. It says, whether the teacher is actually or not does not matter as much as the student being able to perceive the teacher that way. Yeah. But before you take that too far, in Jigden Sumgön's teaching, he also said, he gave the example, he says, a tata, right, a mold, without the proper, ridges and bumps and all that, right, cannot produce an actual tata. So then there also he emphasizes, teachers who don't have realization cannot cause students to give rise to realization. So I think that also needs to be said. Yeah, he says, almost like forcefully, he says, teachers who don't have realization cannot, cannot be the cause of the students' realization.
That kind of calls for self-reflecting on how am I doing?
Yeah.
In terms of my own kleshas or my own
Yes.
compassion. Is that growing? Is there signs of that?
Yes.
Would be also signs that you've encountered a good
Right.
teacher.
Right.
How are my details?
Yeah, right. I mean, sometimes, the emphasis on it's up to the student to perceive can get taken too far.
Yeah.
Right? Then the teacher say, well, it's not me. It's like, hello, conduct yourself properly.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with the Dharma. Just, samsara is just very messy. What time is it? Let's see.
We have about 10 minutes left.
10 minutes.
Yeah.
So here, anyway, quickly, some words of Milarepa. Then we didn't waste our time. after the first verse where he pays homage to Marfa, then the next, because my confusion has been cut from the root, self-awareness has dawned as my guru. So self-knowing. If self-knowing hasn't dawned as your guru, then you must never be parted from a Siddha Lord. This is what I was just saying, you know. Never parted doesn't mean physically, you know. That means you keep checking in when necessary. And also don't over check in, because then you're never going to learn anything. Over checking in, you're not going to figure it out. Then you're being spoon-fed. A Siddha Lord, meaning a Lord, right? A precious, a Lord is authority. Siddha, it doesn't mean like, you know, crazy wisdom. Sometimes people think Siddha, oh, crazy wisdom. You know, Siddha means accomplished. He's accomplished, she's accomplished, and she has authority. Authority, not something that someone gave to her. The authority that comes from having seen and experienced the process that she's now teaching you. So as long as your self-knowing, your own mind, confusion has not been cut, then he says, you know, you must not be parted from a Siddha Lord. All appearances have dawned as my texts. If appearances haven't dawned as my text, then you must never be parted from the genuine teachings. So this is like Shapkar, you know. At the beginning, my guru was my guru. Then, the texts are my guru. Then finally, my mind, this self-awareness, this self-knowing, is my guru. So these two verses actually is the gist of what Shapkar's pithy words are communicating. Revulsion naturally arises for me. If revulsion hasn't naturally arisen for you, then you must never be parted from the antidote. Revulsion means, you know, no more interest, you know. Won't get hooked by the 8 worldly concerns. He says, but if that has not become like second nature, right? That has not reached the state yet where, you know, sometimes the expression is like, you know, everything is like grass to a tiger. If everything attractive, shiny, glossy has become like grass to a tiger to you, then you don't need to worry about antidote. Because you won't get into trouble anymore. I've realized the unborn reality, birthless, true nature of things. And if you've not realized that yet, then you should pay attention to cause and effect. Now, it's not saying that, you know, when you have realized the unborn or the birthless reality of all phenomena, cause and effect doesn't apply anymore. Cause and effect still works, you know, without mistake. But again, you are not going to get into any mischief. That cause and effect will be a problem. Because this sometimes is misinterpreted as, you know, oh, for enlightened beings, cause and effect doesn't matter anymore. It's not doesn't matter. It's that they now perfectly operate within a clear understanding of cause and effect, so that no matter what they do, it will not, they will not be creating suffering. I've understood samsara and nirvana as not two. But if you have not understood that, then you must meditate on the union of the two truths. That emptiness does not cancel out cause and effect. And the workings of cause and effect is only possible precisely because things are interdependent, which is the flip side of emptiness, interdependence. I'm fully trained in the inseparability of self and other. And if you're not fully trained in that realization, then bodhicitta as a concept, bodhicitta as an ideal, you have to hold close to your heart. Again, it's not like bodhicitta poofs, but it's like it's no longer something that is secondary. It's no longer something that you need to worry about. Do I have or do I not have? Do I have or have I lost? Because it's now become, your very existence is bodhicitta. Realization naturally dawns for me. So in every situation, he has realizations. He has understanding. He sees clearly. But if that's not the case for us, then we must never be separated from discriminating awareness, prajna. There's no meditation and post-meditation for me. But if there is still for you, then practice in a solitary place, in a place without distractions. Experiences continually arise for me. If they do not continually arise for you, then you must never be separate from the three nose tips. This is technical term. The winds and channel, nadi, prana. Nadi is channels, prana is wind energy. Yeah, so for Milarepa, okay, so here, this is the example. He's talking about intensive meditations. And then the winds and the drops, practices winds, drops, and channels is like forcefully harnessing energy to give rise to nyam. Most of us probably don't go there. We just let more, naturally occurring nyam. Try to recognize those rather than provoke the arising of those for most of us. I've realized the three kayas are intrinsically present. And if you have not realized that, then creation and completion stages have to be cultivated. And that's not necessarily, like chanting sadhanas. Chanting sadhanas is a method. But chanting sadhanas should lead to us really understanding and practicing the creation and completion stages at all times. For me, the six consciousnesses are completely relaxed. But if that's not the case for you, then you must not be separated from your commitments and samayas. Meaning, like, those guidelines, they should remain as guidelines, meaning you have to ask, wait, did I forget the guidelines? Oh, did I apply the guidelines, Good?
Very good.
Yeah, I'm sure when you read this chapter, you basically got it, So you have to develop confidence in how you're able to have text be your guru. Don't practice Asian humility. In this case, develop some confidence. Not, at the same time, not like, American confidence. That's also very shaky, Also not, Asian humility. That's all manipulative.
Yeah.
yeah, so
Hmm.
So our
see.
governor is predicting that cases here will peak in October,
Oh yeah, I'm
and
sure.
after school starts and all that.
Right, right.
So we're probably not going to be able to reopen
Yeah,
our building for quite some time.
right, right. I mean, basically, right, with vaccinated, unvaccinated mix all together,
Right.
then, of course, it will spread because you don't know what's what.
That's right.
Also, I was listening to NPR talking to a virologist who was saying not only do we need the stats for infections, we also need, next step is the viral load of these infections.
Right.
Certain measures have to be done.
Yeah.
It's one thing to say a double vaccinated person, a fully vaccinated person tested positive because our PCR tests are so sensitive. So even quote unquote the presence of the corpses of the virus in your nasal passage still register a positive.
Yeah.
That kind of a positive is very different from
Yeah.
a high viral load, positive. And so she says, until we get those numbers again, we don't really have a good picture of what's going on. Of course, not having a good picture of what's going on, being cautious is the best policy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so
But the good news is we are going to have a building.
Yeah.
yes, exciting.
I saw that email.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, so now, woohoo!
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Instead of
Yeah,
paying mortgage,
yeah,
That's
now we
right.
have
you build equity.
real liability too.
But the mortgage payment is $700 a month less than the rent was.
Oh yeah,
Isn't that
often.
great?
Yes, often that's the case. That's definitely good. Then of course, now repairs are your problem. So
Well, yeah.
yeah, with equity comes, the
Yeah.
samsara
Yeah.
of equity. Without equity, there's
Hello.
the samsara of, without equity.
Yeah.
So you should just
Still.
Still.
educate the members and say it only means that we've rearranged this samsara.
Yeah, there's more work for you to do now than ever before.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like, yay! Okay, now get to work.
That's true. Anyway,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Dr. Lai.
Okay,
Very,
sure.
very helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, you all have a
And
good Sunday. And
are you traveling in the next period of time, or?
we'll be here until middle September. That is when a few things have been planned, but then of course, is it going to happen?
Right.
One is the Southern Dharma retreat. They're already now putting into place, like, testing 3 days before you come,
Right.
and then doing a instant test when you arrive, things like that.
Yeah.
But then middle September will be really crazy because, like, that starts on that Thursday and the second week of September, that retreat. It ends on Sunday at noon, and then immediately I drive to Virginia because at Randolph College we are doing a sand mandala. But then that event, is it going to happen or not? I think school is going to reopen, but school might say, other than classes, no events, that
Yeah.
bring people together. And
Yeah.
sand mandala, people come and watch. It's like, hey, so that's a question mark. But then that will go from Sunday afternoon to Thursday night, and then Friday morning I fly to New York. That's for a wedding. I'm the officiant for that. The young man that helped start Urban Dharma, he's getting married in New
Oh,
York.
sweet. Very
Oh.
So
nice.
that will continue. I don't think things will get so bad that you can't have weddings, you know, small, you know, it's really small. It's like just his family. So that will happen. And then I come back on Tuesday, and then, so that's the next
That'll be the big thing, yeah.
flurry of things in September. Yeah, so then nothing planned.
Okay.
We'll see.
We'll see,
So we'll see.
Yes.
As
Yeah.
always.
just, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you next time.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.